Communities ignoring this nuclear winter strategy will regret it. 4:16 a.m. The radar screen blooms with a new dot over the Baltic. It moves too fast. It holds course too clean. The duty officer stares, then reaches for the red phone that never rings unless history is about to break. Across 3 time zones, power stations hum like they always do. Refrigerator compressors cycle. Streetlights glow. A late-night nurse scrolls headlines that still look normal. Nobody smells smoke yet. Nobody hears the first order being issued. Then the sirens start. Not the test tone, the real one. It rises like a metal animal from the center of the city. The sound penetrates drywall and bone. Your skin tightens before your brain catches up. A distant flash turns the horizon into a white wound. It is not sunrise. It is not lightning. It is the kind of light that erases shadows by erasing everything else. The windows tremble. Car alarms begin screaming in a chorus with no conductor. Your phone vibrates with an alert that reads like a mistake. Emergency action notification. Seek shelter immediately. The message is short because there is no time left for adjectives. The second blast arrives as a pressure wave that punches the air. The world holds its breath. You feel it in the silence between impacts. People step outside as if the sky can explain itself. They crane their necks and watch a distant cloud climb like a new mountain. As the first day collapses into the second, the real catastrophe begins. Not the detonations, not the firestorms, the part nobody films, the part nobody practices, the months where the sun still rises, but it rises weak. Because nuclear winter is not a single moment. It is a strategy of survival that starts after the last missile lands, and communities that ignore it will regret it when the light goes gray. The command centers come alive. Screens fill with maps and predicted fallout plumes. Secure doors lock. Generators kick on in basements designed for this exact night. Someone speaks the phrase limited exchange like it is a control knob. It is not limited to the people who are hit. Soot climbs into the stratosphere like a silent occupation force. Firestorms feed it. Cities burn hot enough to launch black carbon beyond weather and rain. Up there, the soot does not settle. It circles the planet. It spreads like ink in water. It blocks sunlight in slow motion, and the world begins to dim without permission. The president appears on a broadcast that keeps cutting in and out. The face is pale under studio lights. The voice is steady because fear cannot be allowed to crack on live air. The words are chosen to calm, but they land like cold coins. Meanwhile, your neighborhood hears none of the classified traffic. It only hears fragments. A rumor that the coast is gone. A rumor that the grid is next. A rumor that the taps will stop running by evening. The information gap becomes a second weapon. Governments know too much and say too little. Civilians know too little and fill the silence with fantasies. Every guess becomes gospel after it is repeated. Military protocols snap into place. DEFCON levels shift. Aircraft are dispersed. Submarines receive coded bursts through extremely low-frequency signals. A continent holds a knife to another continent's throat, waiting. You watch people in parking lots yelling at each other over fuel. It feels absurd. It feels petty. Then you realize fuel is not gasoline anymore. Fuel is time. Fuel is mobility. Fuel is the last private advantage. At the supermarket, carts slam into each other. Shelves do not empty because food is gone. Shelves empty because fear moves faster than supply chains. You see hands grabbing flour with no plan for water, yeast, or heat. Outside, the traffic lights blink red, then die. The intersections become negotiations. Horns replace laws. A police cruiser tries to direct cars until its own radio fails, and it becomes just another vehicle. Cell towers overload within minutes. Calls do not connect. Texts hang forever on sending. People stand with phones raised like offerings to a dead god, searching for a bar of signal. On the outskirts, a substation trips offline. It is a small failure, but it cascades. SCADA screens freeze in control rooms. Operators lose visibility, then control. A grid that was stable at midnight becomes a patchwork by dawn. ATMs stop working. The screens show error codes that mean nothing to the customer. Gas pumps lock because payment networks cannot authenticate. The money in your account becomes a number trapped behind glass. The first night is the loudest. Sirens, helicopters, distant booms, the crackle of emergency broadcasts. Then the second night arrives, and the sound changes. It becomes a low, constant murmur. Generators, dogs barking, a few shots fired far away, a baby crying in the next apartment because the building's heat is dying. The city feels like it is listening for something. By day 3, the sky looks wrong. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just wrong. The blue is muted. The sunlight is thin, like it is coming through dirty cloth. Shadows lose their edge. This is when the strategy begins. Most people still think the crisis is about blast zones. They plan to evacuate around the map like it is a weather event. They do not understand the problem is now the atmosphere. Nuclear winter does not care about your zip code. It cares about soot mass and solar reduction. It cares about how long the upper air stays polluted. It cares about how fast crops fail. Your community either becomes a system or it becomes a crowd. A crowd panics, a system adapts, and the difference is decided before the hunger arrives. The first critical decision is coordination, not charity, not heroism, coordination. Without it, resources exist but cannot be used. Skills exist but cannot be found. People exist but cannot be protected. You see the first fracture lines within a week. Households that prepared do not advertise it. Households that did not begin to eye every closed curtain with suspicion. The social temperature drops faster than the air. A rumor spreads that the government is distributing food at the civic center. Hundreds show up. There is no food. There is no plan. There is only a locked door and a printed sign that becomes a target for rage. That evening, 2 people are injured in a fight over a case of bottled water. Nobody dies. Yet. But you feel the new rule writing itself into reality. Scarcity turns neighbors into threats. The invisible threat is not only radiation, it is uncertainty. Information at this moment is poison disguised as clarity. One confident voice on a radio can send an entire neighborhood into the wrong decision. Some communities make the worst choice. They wait. They assume trucks will return. They assume the federal response will be quick. They assume the grid will be repaired like after storms. But this is not a storm. This is a planetary light failure. This is a winter manufactured by fire. This is a slow famine wearing the costume of an outage. The strategy communities ignore is simple in concept and brutal in execution. They must become producers of calories under reduced sunlight. They must do it together. They must do it immediately. Food becomes the foundation of resilience. Not gadgets, not firearms, not solar chargers. Calories. Because hunger does not negotiate. Hunger turns ethics into theory. The first step is distributed production. Every patch of soil becomes valuable. Lawns become garden beds. Rooftops become planters. Empty lots become community plots guarded like infrastructure. In normal times, a city consumes. In nuclear winter, consumption is death. The goal becomes local supplementation, block by block, because central supply chains become fragile myths. Sunlight reduction hits traditional agriculture like an ambush. Even a modest dimming can slash yields. The growing season shrinks at both ends. Frost arrives early and lingers late. So communities pivot to cold-tolerant staples, potatoes, cabbage, kale, beets, barley, crops that can endure poor light and shorter warmth, crops that store well and do not demand delicate care. Greenhouses become strategic assets, not hobbies. Insulated frames, double-layer plastic, thermal mass barrels, passive heat trapping. If artificial light exists, it is rationed like medicine. But plants alone do not sustain a population under prolonged stress. Protein becomes the quiet crisis. Large livestock require feed that the new climate cannot easily provide. So the smart communities shift to low-input animals. Chickens, rabbits, animals that reproduce quickly, animals that eat scraps and forage. animals that convert modest inputs into reliable protein. The second step is preservation, because a harvest that cannot be stored is a harvest wasted. Electricity cannot be assumed. Freezers become dead boxes when the grid fails. Old methods return because they never required a grid. Drying, fermenting, canning, root cellaring, underground pits that hold steady temperatures even when surface air swings wildly. In a colder world, the earth becomes a natural freezer, but only if you know how to use it. Food storage becomes architecture. Pantries become defense positions. The third step is distribution rules. This is the part people hate. This is the part that feels political. But without it, hunger becomes violence. Fair systems prevent raids. Transparent rationing prevents whispered accusations. Agreed-upon shares prevent the strong from taking and the weak from dying first. Mutual aid is not softness. It is stability. It is a firewall against chaos. When every meal counts, social order is a survival tool. While food becomes the long game, heat becomes the nightly battle. Reduced sunlight means reduced temperatures, not just outdoors. Inside homes, inside hospitals, inside the places where babies sleep. Modern heating depends on long chains, natural gas pipelines, electric transmission, maintenance crews, fuel deliveries. All of it assumes peace and functioning logistics. When those chains break, the thermostat becomes a decorative rectangle on the wall. Families face cold as a direct threat. Hypothermia becomes common, quiet, and lethal. Communities that survive establish warming centers. One building, well insulated, heated efficiently, shared by many. It is easier to keep one space warm than 50 homes lukewarm. Wood stoves and pellet stoves become crucial. Not romantic, practical. They cook and heat. But they require fuel, and fuel becomes a shared problem, not an individual stash. Demand rises fast. Over-harvesting becomes a risk. That is why insulation matters more than combustion. Ceiling drafts, layered curtains, door sweeps, shared rooms. People relearn the logic of concentration. One heated room becomes the family's habitat. Sleeping bags pile like nests, blankets layer. Body heat becomes part of the math. Energy planning extends beyond warmth. Communication matters. Lighting matters. Radios matter. In darkness, morale collapses as quickly as calories. Solar panels still work under dim skies, but weakly. Battery storage becomes more valuable than panel wattage. Wind turbines, even small ones, become lifelines when the sun is stingy. Hand-cranked chargers sound ridiculous until they keep a radio alive. A working radio is not entertainment. It is situational awareness. It is the difference between a rumor and a warning. The greatest danger is isolation, not just physical, psychological. Silence corrodes people. Darkness turns hours into burdens. Communities that share light share willpower. Then water becomes the next crisis. Not because it vanishes, but because systems fail. Treatment plants need power. Pumps need power. Chlorination needs chemicals and timing. When power fails, filtration halts. Contamination spreads. Tap water becomes unsafe in hours. People keep drinking it because the habit is deep and trust is automatic. In freezing temperatures, pipes burst. Homes flood, then freeze solid. Infrastructure breaks in thousands of small wounds that add up to a hemorrhage. Smart communities diversify water sources. Wells, hand pumps, springs, storage tanks, rain capture if possible. Shared purification stations. No single point of failure. They stock purification tools that do not require electricity. Filters, chlorine tablets, boiling protocols, simple testing strips if available. The goal is routine, not panic. Sanitation is even more urgent. Waste does not stop when service is due. Garbage piles become disease factories. Sewers back up. Rats thrive. Illness spreads through dense neighborhoods like fire. The most ordinary sickness becomes dangerous when antibiotics are scarce and hospitals are overwhelmed. A cut becomes an infection. A stomach bug becomes dehydration and death. So communities establish waste rules early. Designated disposal zones, composting toilets, closed-loop systems. Strict hygiene protocols. It sounds harsh until you see what happens without it. Education becomes infrastructure. Every resident learns how to disinfect water, how to handle waste, how to prevent contamination. Skills spread faster than supplies. First aid becomes as essential as food storage. Volunteers train for bleeding control, hypothermia management, infection recognition. Gloves, masks, disinfectant become the new public health arsenal. Transparency saves lives. Families report symptoms early, not hide them. Stigma becomes lethal because it delays response. A watchful community stops a sick cluster from becoming an outbreak. As these survival systems form, leadership becomes the most valuable resource, not authority. Trust, earned credibility under pressure. Calm decisions in a loud world. Disagreements erupt. Some demand evacuation. Others demand fortification. Some accuse hoarding. Others accuse freeloading. Fear draws invisible borders between neighbors. To prevent collapse, communities form councils, small, accountable leadership groups chosen for reliability, not popularity. Their job is coordination, not domination. They set communication schedules. They map resources. They organize work rotations. They create rules that are written down and distributed. Clarity reduces conflict because ambiguity breeds suspicion. Security becomes collective too, not militias pretending to be governments. Watch rotations, safe signals, mutual aid patrols. The goal is reassurance, not intimidation. When households barricade alone, they become targets. When neighborhoods watch together, they become harder to exploit. Predators prefer isolated prey. Now the geopolitical picture darkens further. NATO meets in emergency session. Article 5 discussions become whispers and threats. Retaliation logic turns into an equation with no clean answer. Some states go silent. Leadership disappears behind bunkers. Public statements become vague. Diplomatic channels clog or fail. The world feels leaderless at the exact moment it needs structure. Markets collapse. Shipping slows. Ports become choke points. Insurance evaporates. International trade becomes a ghost story people tell to remember the old world. Refugee flows begin, not from blast zones alone, but from cold zones. People move toward imagined warmth. Highways become rivers of stalled vehicles when fuel runs out. Cities become dangerous because density becomes dependency. Rural areas become dangerous because isolation invites desperation. The safe place is not geography. It is organization. The new normal arrives quietly, not with a declaration, with routines, ration schedules, water runs, fuel counts, patrol rotations. School becomes skill training, not academics. You see the separation clearly now. Those who prepared integrate into systems. Those who did not either learn fast or break. The gap between them becomes resentment. And still, the sky stays dim. Weeks pass, and the sunlight does not recover. The cold persists. The growing season fails again. The realization spreads that this is not short-term. This is the phase where communities that ignored the core strategy begin to regret it. They built stockpiles but no production. They bought gear but no governance. They planned for weeks, not seasons. A pantry empties. A neighbor's patience empties sooner. Without a system, the strong take more, the weak take less, and violence becomes the redistribution mechanism. But communities that embrace the strategy stabilize. They are not comfortable, they are not safe. They are simply functional, which is the closest thing to victory. They know the rule now. Survive the long winter by becoming a small civilization. Food production, preservation, distribution, heat management, water and sanitation, communication, leadership. This is not romantic. It is work. It is waking up to shovel snow off a greenhouse roof so the weak sun can enter. It is feeding rabbits with scraps while calculating breeding cycles. It is sending 2 people to check on the elderly every night because cold kills quietly. It is arguing over ration weights and then agreeing anyway because unity is warmer than pride. Months later, the soot begins to thin. The sky brightens in tiny increments. People notice not because it is dramatic, but because shadows start to sharpen again. The world after nuclear winter is not the same world. Borders harden. Governments centralize. Some regions fragment. Infrastructure is repaired unevenly, like scar tissue. The communities that survive are not the ones with the most weapons. They are the ones with the strongest agreements, the ones who treated preparedness as stewardship, not paranoia. The lingering truth is simple and brutal. Modern life was an illusion held together by electricity and trust. When the grid goes down and trust fractures, civilization becomes a choice again. You do not rebuild because someone saves you. You rebuild because your neighbors decide to act like a community instead of a crowd. That decision is the real strategy. And if your town ignores it, if your block waits for rescue that cannot arrive, regret will not be a feeling. It will be a season. Because in the end, nuclear winter does not only dim the sun, it reveals what people are willing to do for each other when the light is gone.